All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Advanced Water Heating Initiative's Residential Working Group call, March 18th today. Joining us with you as always. Great to have you all on. I actually am on site, Washington, at the Housing Hilltop. There's a central heat pump water heater being monitored. Right now, we're putting in the monitor on this cool. There's 22 Sandco 2 units here and 3 big storage tanks. So I've been doing a lot of photography this morning.
Wow,
If my
that was
connection cuts out,
impressive. Look at
isn't that
that.
cool?
Wow.
Yeah,
It is.
huge buildings, two big buildings. So it's a really fun project. You'll be hearing more about this in our commercial working group coming up. But if I cut out a little bit, it's because I'm on site, and I'll pass it over to my colleague Vidisha, who will continue with the moderating. But as long as I've got good connection, let's keep moving forward. Here's our antitrust compliance statement. As always, the Advanced Water Heating Initiative is a member-supported collaborative of professionals from across the U.S., and this diverse membership includes numerous competitors, and care must be taken to scrupulously abide by federal and state antitrust laws. Members should remember that antitrust compliance is important at all time. At this and other HPWH meetings, participants do not discuss competitive pricing, profitability, allocating markets or customers, or promotion of a particular product or accessory. Cool. Well, this is our agenda for today. As usual, we'll do some intro points, and then we'll do a little hot water forum debrief. Want to hear what y'all thought from the residential side of things. Then we'll be turning over to a good friend of mine. You can see him on screen, Jim Plantico from the Community Energy Project. They're based here in Portland, Oregon, and have been doing some really incredible work on installing heat pump water heaters in low-income communities for years now. So we'll get to an update from Jim on that program and some of their successes. And then the second part of the program, we're going to hear from Chris Granda from Energy Solutions on a heat pump water heater pilot in North Carolina in low-income households as well. So excited for both of those presentations. And as we usually do at this point, we want to welcome new folks to AWHI, folks who might be tuning in for the first time. Go ahead and come on mic and let us know who you are. We'd love to welcome you to the Residential Working Group. Anyone with your first meeting here, your first Residential Working Group meeting? Seems like a lot of regulars today. Well, give it another awkward second here. Okay. If you're new and just didn't want to come on mic, go ahead and put your name and org in the chat, and we'd just love to hear where folks are tuning in from. Even if you're a repeat participant here, we'd love to hear where you're coming in from. Great. Well, a couple things, and then we'll get to the hot water forum. Just some of our upcoming webinars. You can see we've done some great ones over the past couple weeks and months. One on new refrigerants and building design. You can see the recording there from late February. Ground source heat pumps as well. Last week we did one on package terminal heat pumps, which are a great solution for multifamily. And then just in next week, we're going to be having a webinar on unlocking the power of building control systems. You can register there with that live link. One other tidbit we'd love to announce. We are going to be sending out an article later this week on the 2024 water heater sales. Electric water heaters crossed 5 million for the first time. This is a new record for as far back as we could see back to the 1950s. It's their highest market share and total sales ever. We saw gas storage for water heaters lost in the past 3 years, and you can see the opening growing between electric and gas. Electric were 17% above their 5-year average. Gas water heaters were 5% lower. And we could be seeing effects from building codes, air quality, a move away from fossil fuels, along with competition. This data does not include instant gas water heaters, which are maybe approaching 20% of the gas water heater market. But the total sales were similar to other years, in fact, a little above. So we do see some shift towards electric in these numbers. Great. Well, just a little chat about the Hot Water Forum. Hopefully a lot of you were there in Portland last week. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago. Wow, already 2 weeks ago. We had some great conversations, takeaways. You may have seen this from all stakeholder meeting, but we did, here were some of our top takeaways across from our working groups. We felt like we're navigating a different political landscape, of course, but the market transformation is happening. There was a lot of commercial heat pump water heater research. Residential manufacturers were out in force. It was great to see so many folks and new products, hear about their new products. And talking about new products, the split heat pump water heaters are coming to town. A couple manufacturers coming out with some great ones. You can see the ecological water heaters there, and they are on this call. So
lost you, Joe.
Of course, he's talking about us. We lost him.
I guess there might be some network issues, but no worries. Joe just wanted to give away some key takeaways from the Hot Water Forum. And yes, we have been talking a lot about split systems, and you'll get to hear a lot of split systems as well at the upcoming equity working group. But moving forward, there were a lot of talk about heat pump water heaters for restaurants as well. And air quality will definitely be a defining movement for heat pump water heater market transformation. Joe, if you're back online, you can definitely take care.
No, that's great. Yeah, let me know if I do cut out. I am on site. So Vidisha thank you for stepping into the breach. Is my quality okay?
Yes, Joe, absolutely fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that summed up perfectly. I'd just like to open it up to the working group. Anybody else have any big takeaways they'd love to talk about from the residential water heating market?
I was impressed that there's 7 manufacturers at the training center with product there.
Yeah, Jim, could you say more about that? I didn't get a chance to go to that. Tell a little bit about that event that they had on Monday.
It was at the training center, so there were they had like 5 different stations where there were presentations, but there was also, and one of the stations was a setup of 7 different manufacturers had their water heaters out there, and they each talked about them and what was different and good, what they were bragging about on them. So, there's lots and lots of interest in the market.
Yeah, so exciting to see how many manufacturers are in market and brought product. That's great. Thanks, Jim. Any other takeaways from the Hot Water Forum? Great. Well, it was always such a great event. So hopefully you all got out as much as we did from the event.
Joe, it's Mark Thompson at LG. I just have a quick question. Was there any discussion of air to water heat pumps? Or I know there must have been, but any takeaways about air to water? I wasn't there.
I'll open that up to the group. And did anyone have any good takeaways from the air to water heat pumps? Chris, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I had the pleasure of attending the Hot Water Forum, but had to leave midway through the Hot Air Forum. And there was a fair amount going on about air to water heat pumps, and I think the thing that reminds me of is Catherine Hamilton one time said on the Energy Gang several years ago now that batteries were like bacon, because they just made everything better. And I think the theme that I heard was that thermal storage is also like bacon. It makes all your air to water heat pumps better. And I think there's a lot more work to do in that area, but a lot of good work being done also.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Bethany, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Chris, that there was a lot of discussion on thermal energy storage. It seemed like, and I kind of jumped around a little bit, but I think that most of the air to water stuff I saw was combined water heating and space heating. So as far as I can remember, I don't think I saw any air to water that wasn't, a combi system.
Except for the split systems that were on display by the
Yes.
manufacturer. This is
Except for the
John
display.
Colliner. Hi.
Yep. Yeah.
What do you mean by air to water? All the residential water heaters, heat pump water heaters are air to water.
Yeah, I think
Mark?
that usually.
Yeah, I
Mark,
was,
what do you want to
well,
say?
LG has a monoblock system, residential size up to 5 tons, and it's you know, X outside the building. So that's the product that we're talking about.
Is it for space conditioning?
It's for both,
Mm-hmm.
but
So
mainly space conditioning, but it can be used for both.
So in the
Yeah.
heat pump water heater world, at least the residential side, what you're talking about is split systems with the compressor outside.
Yeah, I think split systems, hydronic systems. Yeah, John is calling ours as lead. Yeah, John, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I will give a plug for the HPWH now has a hydronics working group. Our next meeting is on April 4th. And a lot of the focus there is the air to water heat pump. Yes, any domestic hot water heat pump is, well, most domestic hot water heat pumps, the unitary systems that we talk about and anything that's a split system outside are air to water heat pumps. And actually, I was at a site this weekend where the individual was running his in-floor radiant off of his water heater prior to installing his boiler, which then we added the air to water heat pump. But these hydronic systems can technically be powered off of a heat pump water heater if you really want to, although I hear it's quite a bad idea for many of them. But a soda air to water heat pump largely is a split system with the outdoor unit. Some of them have an indoor unit, some of them are monoblocks, mostly designed and sized for space heating as well as other possible uses.
Perfect. Well, thanks, John. Yeah, thanks for that great discussion. Really appreciate it, everybody. I do want to give the floor to Nate Jutras for a couple Energy Star updates, and then we'll get to our spotlight presenters. Nate, are you on the call today? Just check if Nate has been able to make it. He had asked for some time. I don't see him on the call. Okay, well, I'll circle back with Nate and see if he's having trouble logging on. But so we can come back to Nate and some Energy Star updates, but let's go to our spotlight presenters. Jim from Community Energy Project is with us today. Jim, if you could come on camera and go ahead and take control of the screen. He's here. I've been tracking this program for a couple years in the Portland area where Community Energy Project is installing heat pump water heaters in low-income communities at no cost. So Jim's going to talk to us a little bit about this program and how it's working and what learnings they've had over the years. So Jim, go ahead.
Can everyone see the screen here?
Yeah, it's looking great.
Great. Again, my name is Jim Plantico. I'm the program director for the in-homes department at Community Energy Project. We specialize in electrification for low-income and marginalized communities. So all of the clients that we serve never pay for any of the services that we provide, and heat pump water heaters are one of the main focuses of the work that we're doing. I don't really need to give this crowd an explanation of how heat pump water heaters work. I'm sure that everyone knows that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory of where we are.
Hey, Jim, just real quick, don't forget to plug that great video you guys made. I know that was on the other slide. Yeah.
Sure. I can backtrack to this video, but there's a link in this slide for a video just explaining generally how heat pump water heaters work, and that to an audience that's not familiar with them, and then also explaining some of the maintenance issues that we're seeing with water heaters in general. So I highly recommend people taking a look at that. So at Community Energy Project, like I said, our focus is electrification for low-income folks. We have been seeing individuals quite often where we get into a home assessment and their existing water heater is not working because they just can't afford a repair, for example. They can't come up with $400 to fix a heating element. And so they live without hot water. And over the past 5 years, CEP has replaced 330 water heaters in this specific community. And really, it's our relationship to funding. The more funding for these water heaters, the more water heaters that we can install. Back in 2020, we had a grant or a donation to install 100 water heaters. We ran through those funds, and then in subsequent years, we've been relying on a program through Energy Trust of Oregon, which is part of the Community Partner Fund, which is a way to fully fund heat pump water heaters and replace electric resistance water heaters in our clients' homes. And over the past 5 years, I've been really working on asking, requesting, and getting additional funding to support this effort, because I think it's one of the biggest components in the work that we do. And this year, we're planning on installing 100 heat pump water heaters. Our current service area, the need is greater than our supply. Right now, we're only, because our funding source is through Energy Trust of Oregon, we can only serve Energy Trust of Oregon territories, and currently our organization is serving Portland Metro only. And again, under this program, since it is funded through Energy Trust of Oregon, and Energy Trust of Oregon really doesn't like fuel switching, there is no allotment for gas replacement, which is a big issue for us. Oftentimes we'll get into a house and we want to install a heat pump water heater, but we can't because there is no ability for us to fund a gas replacement. And state of Oregon still, even though Joe's numbers is dropping, people are switching from gas units to electric units. We are still seeing an issue with just the sheer number of gas hot water heaters in the state. And there are limited resources for low-income and marginalized communities to get a fuel switch done. And that's one of the biggest barriers of the work that we're doing. Other installation barriers for these programs, the existing water heater has to be 10 years or older. We're also running into electrical constraints. So ETO does not allow us to switch from any fuel source. So we can sometimes get exceptions for propane, but it's a case-by-case basis. We have to demonstrate a unique case to get those funded. So generally, the electrical is often a concern if the electrical can't support a 30 amp circuit or 30 amp breaker. That is a challenge. We're currently looking into alternatives with different heat pumps, the plug-in models, but anytime we're adding additional costs to the installation of these units, we can fund the unit itself, the replacement cost of the unit, but electrical, moving of the water heater, any sort of constraints with building a space for the water heater, the drainage pan for water heaters, all those things are secondary, and we have to find additional funding to gap fund those installations. Another issue that we have are ducting requirements. So when a heat pump water heater is in interior space, we need to bring ducting from the outside and have that hot water heater vent back out to the outside. That also is an additional expense, and so it prevents us from installing heat pump water heaters in interior locations. Also, generally, we make our clients aware of the noise of the heat pump water heater and making sure that they're comfortable with that installation. And then also, depending on where the heat pump water heater is located, the cooling that occurs as the water heater vents is also a concern that can be barriers in getting these installations done. But heat pump water heaters are the number one thing that I can recommend in any house. Our clients are saving $300 on average per house. And of the 75 heat pump water heaters that we installed, we saved, over 100,000 kilowatt hours of electricity annually. And our clients are saving 22,500 on their annual electric bills for those clients. It is the one measure that I can install that I don't need to address any sort of massive shell measures. Oftentimes, when we come in to look at strategies to make our clients' houses more energy efficient, we run into a lot of deferred maintenance issues, leaky roofs that prevent us from insulating the space, and those sort of things. And so a heat pump water heater is just an easy way for us to provide very quick savings to the client without having to address a lot of deferred maintenance issues. The other opportunity for us is that once we're in the client's house, it really gives us an opportunity to use the heat pump water heater as a bridge to offer additional services to our clients. And so we feel that the heat pump water heater for us is a very quick and easy way to get an individual into sort of the green space and understanding how energy efficiency works. And it's a very, very clear demonstration of, a way to reduce their utility bills, and also is a way for us to build trust with our clients. And then lastly, if you ever have a client in need, call Francis in our office. We're here to answer any questions you might have, and Francis schedules energy assessments for us at Community Energy Project.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, we've got some good time for questions. Really appreciate that overview. And I've been observing this great program for years. Maybe just start a little bit. I mean, one, it sounds to me y'all are super appreciative of the funding that Energy Trust is able to provide for the electric resistance switching. But talk to us about how are you trying to stitch together funding for the clients who have fossil fuel water heaters that need a new water heater? How do you try to do that?
Yeah, I mean that is the biggest challenge for us. I mean, like I said, oftentimes we'll come into houses and the heating element, one heating element in their existing unit is failing, or maybe both of them are failing, and there's limited resources for us to replace that hot water heater and fully fund it. PSEF, Portland Energy, a Clean Energy Fund in the city of Portland, enables us, if we're doing a whole house retrofit, to fund a fuel switch under that program. But there really isn't any program that's specific to fuel switching in the state of Oregon. And so oftentimes, it's a challenge for us to come up with money to fund these units.
Got it. Tom is wondering if you think the 120 volt heat pump water heaters might help with some of those electrical pain.
Yes, that is certainly a possibility, especially in houses that have lower occupancy. Maybe not a recommendation for a house with 8 people in it, but for certainly our clients who are seniors or individuals within a house, that's certainly an option. We don't have a program currently that's funding those units specifically. We also talked about split units a little bit. I think that there's some opportunity there where we can't install, because of height restrictions, can't install a heat pump water heater utilizing that sort of technology. Again, it all comes down to cost and how can we find programs and develop programs and produce grants to get this type of work done. It is literally the easiest thing that we can do without touching major shell measures or handling deferred maintenance to get energy improvements into a home quickly.
That's really fascinating. I never thought about that before. Bethany's asking about do you ever work in multifamily, or are you guys just exclusively single family?
We do work in multifamily. We don't have any specific grants right now to address, like a single multifamily unit where we're replacing all of the equipment. We are replacing equipment unit by unit. But I think that one of the great strategies, if you can do it, is replacing all units within a multifamily dwelling with the heat pump water heaters.
Cool.
Can I ask a quick follow-on question,
after,
Joe?
Yeah, Bethany. Yeah, go for it.
So it sounds like you have experience installing heat pump water heaters in multifamily. Are those generally in closets? Is there enough space? Are they venting cold air to the living space? Any comments on that?
Yep. We've done a few strategies. Yes, oftentimes in closets. When they're in an interior hallway, for example, it's a lot more challenging to vent that unit and duct it out. So, and that adds to the cost of these installations. We've done in a couple examples. We've moved the water heater. Let's say there's a balcony. We've created a closet in the exterior of the unit, housed the heat pump water heater in that space. And then sort of bypassed the ducting and cool air venting.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Jim, you've installed 300 plus of these, so I'm sure you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Tell us about some of the successes that you've had and what are clients saying, and then talk about some of the challenges you've had and what you've learned from all these installations.
The quickest and easiest success would be, energy savings, consistent hot water. Especially for clients who haven't had hot water for a while, getting hot water in the house is, people are crying often when we're able to provide that service. The challenges, other than the ones that I've already mentioned, there is a noise factor with these units that we need to have folks understand. They do exhaust cold air, and so placement is a concern of ours. We do want to address that. We the biggest struggles we have is post-installation. Filter cleaning is something that we're really pushing right now, is making sure that the units are clean, especially in a house with a lot of occupants and maybe a lot of pets and a lot of dander and that type of stuff. We have seen units that the heat pump function won't be working because the filter is clogged, and then it resets to standard resistance. Those continue to be a challenge, and so I am working on developing maintenance programs within our community where it's a touch point for us to get out into the house, talk to the client about their experiences, and then also just do a quick filter clean where you just vacuum out the filter. It's one strategy that we have in place to make sure that these units are working correctly and fully functioning.
That's really great. Great to hear that point. That filter can be key. Remembering to clean it. It's something new for folks. Chris, I see. Or go ahead, Jim. You can.
Well, and then the other thing is there's a bit of education on codes. So the units will sometimes display certain codes, and we've got continuing education on that as well. That's been a focus of ours.
Thanks. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Jim, a real interesting work that you're doing. I just had a question about if you could talk a little bit about how you estimate the savings, that $300 per unit per year from the heat pump water heaters.
That's just a basic savings calculation off of there's a footnote, I think, on the slide. I can't pull it up right now, but we did a basic heat load calculation on the energy savings. And it's not perfect science on it depends on usage, obviously.
Yeah. There is Energy Star has good data too that you can even pull from. But yeah, if you're doing basically all electric resistance, they've got good like rules of thumb savings. I think it's like $550 for a family of 4.
Yeah, and we do home energy scores on all of these clients to do before and after savings.
Cool. I'm just trying to see any. Maybe a last question. Do you ever get really fancy, then try to do any demand response with any of the units? Are you working with your local utilities to shift the load? When people are running their heat pump water heaters?
Yes, that's a good point, Joe. We do have one program currently active, the Smart Grid Test Bed Collaboration, which is a grid modernization project with Department of Energy and PGE, where we're focused on a very specific space within the city of Portland, and we're installing both e-gauge monitors and at the panel to measure energy use in the house, and then we're also putting demand response on the water heater itself. And so we're currently testing that. So like in the event of a brownout or such, they can reduce the temperature of the water heater remotely.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Well, appreciate it. Thanks for the great work. Thanks for being on and sharing all the great learnings that CEP has had on this program. Look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Awesome. Great. Folks, so if my audio or video is going out, it is just a reminder, folks, I am on site here to Central Heat Pump Water Heater install. I'm using my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot. But I think we got Nate Jutras on the line. And Nate, Chris, before we turn it over to you, I'm just going to ask Nate for any quick Energy Star updates, and then we'll turn it over to Chris Granda.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. A couple things I want to mention. Maybe folks have have noticed it in meeting with us or are wondering what's going on with EPA's Energy Star program. I don't have any real concrete updates. There's a lot that's in flux. One thing that is, and hopefully will change for the better, but our contract was abruptly terminated with ICF. So many of you are used to seeing Paul Campbell from ICF do a wonderful job representing EPA and talking about our initiatives and providing updates on all our work. So they've been sidelined. We're hoping that we can rebid the contract and bring them back on again. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks every day and a lot of kind of unsettling news that many of you are hearing and we're hearing. Usually trickle down through many different source points. So who knows what's accurate and what's not. But we've enjoyed a lot of support from industries, letters from industry to the administrator expressing support for the Energy Star program. That's been really appreciated. And if folks have questions, I don't want to go on too long, especially because there's not too much else to really speculate on and share. But if people have questions and they want to talk offline, I'll drop my number into the chat, and feel free to text me or give me a call. We can set something up. That's it.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate that. Thanks for keeping us posted on how things are going. And yeah, we're all pulling for Energy Star to be able to continue doing the great work. I'll turn it over to you, Chris Granda. Thanks so much, Nate. Go ahead and take control if you'd like, Chris, for your slides.
Great. Do I need to do anything to move the slides forward?
If you, there should be a button at the top that says take control.
Okay, I see it. Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
There we go. Let's see. I'm still not quite. Okay. I think I see how that works. All right. Great. Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining this afternoon. I'm going to share with you a little bit about a project that Energy Solutions wrapped up in North Carolina last year, where we did demand response research with connected heat pump water heaters in low-income homes in North Carolina. Just a brief word about Energy Solutions. If you're not familiar with us, we have been around for about 30 years and are headquartered in California, and now have offices across the country and about 500 employees. We're a little unusual in that we do a lot of program implementation work, primarily C&I midstream programs, but we also do codes and standards work, and we do that for clients in California, New York, and Massachusetts. And my division, policy and ratings, is responsible for that. So without any further ado, just jumping in here. Why did we do this project? It actually started as part of a conversation at the 2018 Hot Water Forum, where I ran into the energy director for the North Carolina Justice Center, which is a anti-poverty agency in central North Carolina. And the energy director was looking for a way to move heat pump water heaters into low-income homes for many of the reasons that Jim just described, as a savings measure. It took a while to pull this together, but we ended up having support from the US DOE, from the Justice Center in North Carolina. Rebuilding Together for the Triangle was the sort of the boots on the ground doing the actual installation work. And they're a low-income housing services group. And we also received funding in addition to from the DOE from major private foundations. Now, I'm going to skip over this slide real quickly, but the answer of why were we interested in doing this in North Carolina is North Carolina has the third largest concentration of electric storage water heaters of any state in the country. It's Florida, then Texas, and then North Carolina. There's over 3 million of them, and as we've all been talking about, that's the easiest shift from an existing electric resistance water heater to a heat pump water heater. And there are a variety of other reasons here in the slide too, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. So here are our participants. As I mentioned, they were 24, and the average participating household was one or two folks, generally older and all low income. These are all homeowners because they had to, in order to participate in RTT's program, they had to own their homes and be able to make decisions about the systems in their homes. And in all cases, the heat pump water heater was installed as part of a more comprehensive health and safety and energy infrastructure renovation of the home. So we're not talking about anything huge, but generally replacing or upgrading HVAC systems, the water heater, and then a typical thing might be patching a hole in the roof or fixing other structural issues. One thing to note here is that while we had the table at the top here shows the occupancy of the households, the occupancies changed, and this is typical for all homes, but particularly for this cohort. And what we saw was that, as you would expect, the change in occupancy also changed the hot water consumption. All right, so here's a little bit more detail on the homes. I think the thing to note is that in North Carolina, water heaters can be installed in all kinds of situations. So about half of them were sort of maybe what you think of typically, where the heat pump, where water heaters installed inside in a conditioned space, in a closet or other conditioned space. But then we had water heaters in crawl spaces, water heaters in other semi-conditioned spaces like a garage. And then we had a few that were in completely unconditioned space. It does get below freezing in North Carolina, but not for very long usually. And it's not uncommon to see water heaters of all types installed in sort of like attached sheds on the sides of homes, that kind of situation. So it really was a good opportunity to check out performance across a wide range of ambient conditions. We were expecting to replace existing electric resistance water heaters with electric heat pump water heaters, given the high prevalence of electric resistance in North Carolina. But just by chance, and also because we were working in the Triangle region in central North Carolina, where there happens to be a fairly good gas service, about half of our water heaters that were replaced were actually gas. And the participants received the necessary electrical upgrades. And remember, again, this was part of more comprehensive renovations, so RTT was able to provide those. Everybody got a 50-gallon tank, except for one household that was larger. They got an 80-gallon tank. And as you can see, the installs were started in 2021 and spread over 2 years because of the nature of this being part of a larger scope of work. So these were all CTA 2045 or EcoPort equipped water heaters. We used e-radio universal communications modules. Those were provided as an in-kind contribution from Pacific Northwest National Labs. They had been purchased for a different project and were no longer used for that. So we were able to use them for ours. We did a full year of both control and monitoring for all 24 of those participants, and it was typically a week of control followed by a week of monitoring, and that was to be able to establish a baseline versus controlled scenario for every water heater in the program. We didn't install mixing valves or monkey with the mode of the heat pump water heater, other than what the what RTT set at the time of installation. Part of the reason for that was that the funding for the installation came through earlier, and so the installation of the water heaters began before we actually were able to get in and design protocols for it. So I think what's fair to say is that the water heaters probably are fairly representative of your typical heat pump water heater, just installed outside of the context of any program, probably operating in default mode and probably set to 120, 125 degrees set point temperature. All right, so what were our findings? Now you can see here that our per unit savings were significantly less than Jim found, but just a reminder that we're talking about North Carolina, which has some relatively low electricity prices. That 920 kilowatt hours that you see there represents about saving 55% over what we estimated the consumption of an electric resistance water heater would be. And that was based on REX data from DOE. Because we didn't have the opportunity to actually monitor the electricity consumption for water heating of the houses that were in the study before the heat pump water heater was installed. All of the heat pump water heaters participated in the load shifting study, and we found that you could shift about 50% of the energy that was being used in the baseline scenario during the peak periods. About 50% of that energy could be shifted to off-peak periods, which is great. And that included during the winter peak, which is a morning in I believe it's January, for Duke Energy, which was the largest utility in the area there, that we were able to shift 60% of the electricity being used by these water heaters to off-peak times. And under Duke's time of use rates, and we didn't actually sign anybody up for those time of use rates because we didn't know ahead of time whether it was going to save energy or not. But had those water heaters been signed up for the time of use rates, we estimated that it would have reduced the cost of operating electric water heaters, going from electric resistance to heat pump water heater, by about $44 a year. Now, there's a cautionary note about that, however, because the thing is that for all of these customers, at least in Duke's territory, when you adopt a time of use rate as opposed to just the default residential rate, it applies to everything that's attached to your meter. And what we found is that for the folks in our cohort, in our participant group, that the water heaters were only if it was electric resistance, it'd be about a third. If it was a heat pump water heater, it'd be less than a quarter, like 20% of their total electricity use. And the biggest electricity consumer was often AC. And if they weren't able to shift their AC in the way that they were shifting their water heater use, that adopting a TOU rate would have the somewhat perverse effect of lowering the cost of heating hot water, but increasing the cost of space cooling. And the net effect on their bill would be more or less a wash. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that unless you are able to apply dynamic pricing to only those units that are being shifted, the net benefit on the customer's bill may be compromised. So let's dig into the load shifting a little bit more, and I'm keeping an eye on the time here, Joe, so I'll try and get through these last two slides real quickly. This is the load shifting schedule for the winter at the top and the summer at the bottom. And in both of those two seasons, there were main and shoulder, or cold and shoulder and hot and shoulder periods, and that was defined by Duke's time of use rates. Now, the different colored areas there are sort of defined by the CTA 2045 commands that were applied there. And this was CTA 2045 A. So load up did not mean that we were changing the set point temperature. This was just starting load up earlier or expanding the dead band. And then critical peak meant very little electricity consumption was allowed of any kind, and shed meant that I think electric resistance was not permitted, and maybe also increase the dead band around the set point temperature. The takeaway from this slide is the length of time that certainly in the summer from 2 to 7 p.m., that's 5 hours, that we had a critical peak period. So basically, where very little electricity consumption was allowed. And by and large, we found that these 50-gallon heat pump water heaters did just fine. In other words, that the participants in the study did not experience cold water runouts during that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But in general, we had good overall customer satisfaction, and were able to demonstrate significant load shifting. Now here's a little digging the story behind the scenes a little bit. The dashed green lines that you see there are the baseline for the baseline average for the 24 heat pump water heaters in the study. The purple line with the white dots is the average for those 24 heat pump water heaters under control scenarios. And remember, the dark orange is critical peak, the light orange is shed, and the blue or blue-green is load up. So what we were trying to do was to decrease energy consumption during the dark orange and light orange periods. And as you can see, we did that. However, what happened is that when those periods were over, and we more or less turned over control of the water heaters back to the manufacturer's algorithms that were built in, you see a spike in electricity consumption. And that's just because the water heater, based on temperatures in the tank and everything, thinks, oh, I need to heat up fast at this point because I haven't been keeping up. That doesn't necessarily need to be that way if if, for example, the control period ends at 10 p.m. and you know that you're not going to need hot water until 6 a.m. or so. The water heater has plenty of time to recover. Water heaters don't always know that, or at least the algorithm on them doesn't always know that. So this is an interesting example of sources of potential additional savings in the future. Let's see, any last thoughts on that? Just some other quick takeaways here, and I'm going to skip over most of the details here and let folks read it themselves. But I'd say that low income, a lot of the work that's been done with heat pump water heaters so far has tended to focus on folks who are probably early adopters and that they are interested in the technology for its own sake and willing to become, quite engaged with it. Our participant cohort, we're not early adopters. And for that reason, I think that they're probably more representative of most of the water heating customers that we'll encounter when heat pump water heaters really get up to to be a mainstream product. As I said before, most of the participants were happy with their heat pump water heaters, but it definitely required a little bit of a adjustment, more on the part of the manufacturers and installers, and that installation location was important, particularly in relatively small homes. Noise in a few cases was an issue. And also in the few cases where there were performance issues that required callbacks and follow-ups, although heat pump water heaters tend to have 10-year parts warranties, the fact that they also tended to have 1-year labor cost coverage definitely created a problem in some cases for some customers. And other than that, I'll just stop talking here and open it to questions.
Great. Okay, it seems like, okay, Tristan, it seems like you've got a lot. Tristan, do you want to come on mic and maybe ask your top 2 questions and then circle back with Chris afterwards on some of the others, and then we'll answer Tom's question, and that'll probably take us to the end of the hour. So Tristan, you got your top 2?
Sure. I'll go with my top 2. Whoa. Sorry about the noise. So you did 2-hour load-ups and 3-hour load-ups in the evening. Were you monitoring that storage capacity number and determining that such long load-ups were needed?
I think the simple answer is probably no. But for more detail, I'm going to refer people to our summer study paper, which is available on our website and also from ACEEE. Here, I'll go to the last slide. If you go to energysolution.com and then look on the Who We Are tab, and under How We Think, you'll see grid connected heat pump water heater benefits for low-income households in the southeastern United States. And that'll give you more detail. Also, Daniela Urigwe, my colleague who worked on this with me, is going to be presenting at the Connected Working Group for heat pump water heaters, or did present, I guess, on last Friday. And
I think maybe she did last week.
Yeah. And she may have addressed that during that presentation.
Okay, and then there was a gap of 2 hours after the load up in the summer schedule. Do you know why you were loading up and then not shedding right away? That's pretty unusual too.
Yeah, I think that had to do with the way the time of use rate was designed, but I don't know why that the gap is there. Yeah, sorry, I can't address that.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Tristan. And we'll try to get that link for folks. Tom, you want to ask your question quickly?
Sure, thanks. Chris, it looked like there might be a resistance spike after that conservation period in the graphs showing now, and I was curious, could your remote controls put the units into a compressor-only mode for 2 hours and then set them free?
Yeah, great point. And that's really what I was sort of hinting at with my, potential future savings. I think, we didn't attempt that during this study, but yeah, I think that's a great example. Now, when you start to do things like that, what you're getting into is learning about how that particular user uses that particular heat pump water heater. And so for that evening sort of compressor only mode, that's going to work fine for any household except for ones where people work a night shift, right?
Yep.
So you need to have some knowledge about what the household's hot water consumption profile looks like. But we're starting to see water heaters that at least say they are gathering that kind of information and acting upon it. So I think it's certainly possible.
Great, thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, Chris. Brings us to the top of the hour. I'm going to head back to the monitoring of this central heat pump water heater here in Tacoma. Thanks for putting up with any connectivity issues. Chris and Jim, thank you so much for your great presentations. We'll send out slides and recording probably tomorrow. So thanks everybody so much. We'll catch you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.